Are you ready for some tough questions?
You're not answering my question.
This is mind-blowing.
What do you love about America?
And the question is, what is your truth?
Why aren't you holding yourself to that standard?
Let's start with easy. Who's attacking?
You might have put an innocent man behind bars.
Can you help negotiate peace?
Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable. And in a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be the guardrails.
She wants to be the president of the United States of America, but there's nothing presidential about scolding your fellow citizens.
Donald Trump has had a different approach to going after the black vote. I think for him it's been more transactional.
He was the president, the only president that made us feel patriotic again.
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. Election Day is, let me check my notes. Yes, exactly. Well, it's less than 2 weeks away. And guess what? Nearly 25 million people in this country have already voted as of this afternoon. On the trail today, Vice President Harris, former President Trump, are courting voters in Pennsylvania and Georgia, respectively. But over that whole campaign maneuvering, it's fair to say, statements made by President Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, in a New York Times interview. Let's listen to some of that.
He's certainly an authoritarian, admires people who are dictators. He has said that. So he certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, for sure.
In response to that interview, Vice President Harris warned that Trump, quote, wants unchecked power, unquote, and will not be reined in.
This is a window into who Donald Trump really is, from the people who know him best, from the people who worked with him side by side in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room. Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable. And in a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be the guardrails against his propensities and his actions.
Harris is in Pennsylvania now, preparing for a CNN town hall to be televised later this evening. She stopped at a volunteer appreciation event at a Philadelphia deli this afternoon. Meanwhile, former President Trump participated in a town hall at a church in Zebulon, Georgia. He's also delivering remarks at a rally in Duluth, Georgia, later this evening. Our Nicole Killian and Robert Costa are covering all of this for us. I want to start with Nicole in Duluth, Georgia, with the Trump campaign. So, Nicole, the Trump campaign has a response to this John Kelly interview. Tell us what it is.
They are basically disputing what John Kelly said about the former president, as saying that these are more debunked stories from Kelly that have been fabricated. And certainly it is no surprise that both the former president and John Kelly have had their differences over the years. And this really isn't the first time that John Kelly has criticized the former president. But while we haven't heard directly from the former president responding to these claims, many within his orbit have.
And Nicole, I hear you competing quite well with the noise around you. Peter Navarro being introduced. We can see that on the big screen over your shoulder. I understand you had a chance to talk to some voters while you were there in Georgia. What did you hear?
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, obviously the big question was whether or not these comments might sway voters. But considering that the former president has a very strong and entrenched base, most of the people we talked to here, many of whom have been waiting here since before the sun came up, in essence told us that this really doesn't change their view of the former president. Take a listen to what they told me earlier today.
Oh, I don't buy it at all. I don't care about your books. I don't care if he's got orange hair or he did whatever he did. We don't care about that. We care about this country. And I'm going to tell you something. He was the president, the only president that made us feel patriotic again.
Does it trouble you that some of these comments are coming from people within his administration or his former administration?
Well, he may say things he don't mean sometimes, but you know what? We all say things we don't mean sometimes. We all slip up sometimes, whatever.
Pushing the boulder up the hill. How do you get college kids these days to vote Republican?
So again, in terms of these voters, you know, for the most part, as you heard there, they're still standing by the former president, which is what we continue to see time and again, even with someone like John Kelly, a retired four-star general, issuing this kind of warning about the former president and some of the things that he said behind closed doors. Many of these voters remain unmoved, which is kind of what we have seen time and again. Every time there is another story or the former president says something inflammatory, these voters tell me that they are willing to look past that because for them it's still more about the former president's policies than his personality and his rhetoric.
They tend to stick and stay, Trump supporters do. Nicole Killian, thanks so very much. I want to bring in Robert Costa. Robert, your perspective on the day's events, the John Kelly interview, the Atlantic article. Is it, from your vantage point, mostly cable fodder or something the Trump campaign ought to be somewhat nervous about?
We're seeing Major, this campaign, return to the center of gravity that long dominated it when President Biden was in the race. Biden's closest advisors, like Mike Donilon, have long argued that Trump's conduct going back to 2016, 2017, with his response to the white supremacy march in Charlottesville, necessitated that democracy was at the fore of the political message from the Democrats. And you heard that again and again from President Biden. You didn't necessarily hear the focus on democracy day in, day out. Once Vice President Harris became the presumptive nominee, there was more focus on introducing her to the country, the economy, and other issues. But now, as the election nears, the sense of alarm among Democrats is driving so much of their activity, and so is the news, including the comments made by the retired general.
And based on your reporting, Robert, the early summer for the Harris campaign was the joy brat summer, consolidating the base, creating that sense of excitement, possibility. But if they believe that they have locked down more or less the Democratic base of support, except for some very much tailored outreach to Latino men and African-American men, is this focus on Trump to get those still undecided fence-sitters, possibly lightly attached Republicans, still torn about their choice?
You can look at what Vice President Harris said today about retired General Kelly in his remarks in the same light as you saw her events with former Congresswoman Liz Cheney. It's all part of a broader appeal to suburban Republicans, many of them women, living outside of Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Detroit, Atlanta, maybe even Houston and other parts of the country.
Raleigh, Charlotte.
North Carolina. I was just with former President Trump there. And he knows, the Trump campaign knows, I'm told by sources close to him, that they have some soft support among some traditional Republicans. That's why Trump is going back to his base, to evangelical Christians. I was with him on Monday when he was with Franklin Graham, the evangelist. And you see this emphasis on Trump stoking his base to make sure that if he loses the Nikki Haley voter or the Liz Cheney Republican, he still has enough Republicans coming out for him.
And we have 25 million voters who've already cast ballots. They've already made up their mind. Is there much left in the persuasion part of this calendar, Robert, or do you believe it is essentially what the political professionals always tell it is at this time of a campaign, getting out the vote?
I think you can't read too much into the early vote numbers. It shows a lot of energy and interest in this campaign.
Both sides, yep.
But especially after 2020 and the way vote by mail was handled by Republicans, there was an aversion to it. Now there's an emphasis on it
from
Trump himself.
Yep.
So it's hard to say that this leads to a Republican wave or a Democratic wave. It's early vote, it's interest, but that day of vote still matters. Republicans have long done pretty well in many states on day of voting, but you see Democrats believing they can still draw out non-voters day of. They're thinking about 2022, those people who don't normally participate in elections. In 2016, they liked an outsider in Trump. In 2022, some of those outside voters who don't participate came to the polls because of abortion rights. Will they do so again in 2024? Democrats wonder that.
And there are also lots of people who registered for the first time this summer, and we don't know what they're going to do either, and they're not showing up in the polls. Robert Costa, always a pleasure.
Thank you,
sir. From 2017 to 2019, nobody in Trump's White House orbit had more access to the Oval Office than John Kelly. Next, more on the warnings from Kelly if Trump returns. You're streaming America Decides.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Let me see if you can find me. I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices. You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy. It's gonna be a ride. We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 mile an hour.
This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes. Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights
What a finish at the final round of play.
and in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
On 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone,
This could happen to anybody.
and sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. As we just discussed, John Kelly told the New York Times former President Trump is, quote, certainly an authoritarian who, again quoting, falls into the general definition of a fascist. We should point out these are not terms casually thrown about in American political dialogue, certainly not this close to a presidential election. With that as a backdrop, I want to bring in Ray Mabus. He served as a Secretary of the United States Navy from 2009 to 2017. Prior to that, he served as the governor of Mississippi from 1988 to 1992. Ray, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us. If you have any assessment of the potential political impact of this, I offer that opportunity to you. But I also want you to tell our audience how rare it is for people who served with any president, Republican or Democrat, particularly those who served with a military background, or to say things of this nature. How rare that is.
I know John Kelly very well, a Marine 4-star, rose to the very top of the American military as a Marine, lost a son in Afghanistan. And just as you said, this is an extraordinary thing for somebody of John Kelly's background, of John Kelly's stature, to say, and to say on the record. And I think it shows the depth of concern that he has, the danger that he sees to American democracy. This is the most dangerous time for American democracy, perhaps since the Civil War. And John Kelly felt an obligation, a patriotic service obligation to say something, that he could not remain quiet, knowing the risk that we would take, just the danger that we would take by returning somebody like this to the Oval Office. And, he's not the only one to use the term fascist. Mark Milley, another four-star chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who I also know very well, said that Trump was fascist to the core. And for people like this, for people at the very top of the American military who dedicated their lives to nonpartisan service, because the American military can't be the military of one party or another. It is the American military, and they take an oath to the Constitution, not an oath to any leader, not an oath to any party or any office. They take an oath to the Constitution and the idea that is America. And for John Kelly to say what he has said shows just what a dangerous moment we are in and what a terrible, terrible idea it would be to send Donald Trump back to the White House.
Ray, do you have any sense of the potential political impact of all this?
Well, as a former elected official, it should have an impact. People should pay attention to it. And if there are undecided voters out there, this is the type of thing that you cannot ignore. But as you pointed out a little bit earlier, this is also going to be really a turnout election. And for those people who are wondering whether to vote and how to vote, if this doesn't motivate you, if this doesn't frighten you, if this doesn't concern you about America, America's future, not just for us, but for our children, then I don't think anything will. So I think it should have a political impact, and I believe that it will. John Kelly is too iconic a figure. John Kelly represents the military, the military is the most trusted, most respected organization in America today. So, to have John Kelly say this and to say that that Trump would put the military at risk, to say that he would put the military in his personal service to use against American citizens, and that he was worried that Trump might use nuclear weapons, and took steps, he and Milley took steps to make sure that Trump couldn't do it. The political impact cannot be nothing. You cannot just pass over this. If you are an American worried about this country, if you are an American concerned with democracy, if you are an American who wants America to stay America, you've got to listen to this.
Ray, as you know, as being someone who represented Mississippi as governor, dealt with the constituents there, know that is a very pro-Trump state. I'm sure you still encounter people who are Trump supporters, who I'm sure have said to you, yeah, but inflation was lower, the world was safer, it wasn't on fire, and the border was more secure, and that's all I need to know. All this other stuff is just noise to me. What would you say to them?
Well, number one, I can argue those policies all day. But
I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could.
But this overwhelms any particular policy because it's not going to matter on those particular policies if we don't have a democracy anymore. It's not going to matter what somebody does on some of these things if they are an autocratic ruler, if they cozy up to dictators like Putin and Xi and Kim Jong-un. And if you, this is something that is a danger to you as an individual. And regardless of what you think of some of these policies, if you believe in America, and if you believe in the American military, then that's what I tell them. You have got to take this seriously, and you have got to rethink what you're going to vote for. Because if if you get a dictator, if you lose American democracy, who knows what policies are coming and who knows how it will affect you, because no one will be safe.
Former governor of Mississippi, former Secretary of the U.S. Navy, Ray Mabus. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Major.
CBS News confirms that the Justice Department has sent a letter to Elon Musk's Political Action Committee saying his cash sweepstakes for registered voters could violate federal law. CNN was first to report this. Earlier this week, several former Department of Justice officials who served in Republican administrations sent a complaint to the DOJ about this lottery. Musk has pledged to award $1 million to a new swing state voter every day who signs a petition for his pro-Trump super PAC. As America Decides voters know very well, it's not just the race for the White House. Power on Capitol Hill is also up for grabs November 5th. Next, how races in New York could and probably will control the House, and therefore who will wield the Speaker's gavel. That's next. You're streaming America Decides.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
This is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. Regardless of who wins the White House, the next president, of course, is going to need help from Congress to get anything significant done. Republicans, as you well know, hold a narrow majority in the House, meaning a small number of races will determine who controls the lower chamber. For more, I'll bring in our Scott McFarland, who joins us from Poughkeepsie, New York, and with the sun setting, that his LL Bean photo shoot all ready to go. Looks spectacular, Scott. Tell me about what races in New York you are most interested in.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like some credit for dedication to mission and the program coming to such a difficult place at such a difficult time of year. It's absolutely breathtaking in the mid-Hudson Valley of New York at peak foliage season. We're here, though, because forget the blue wall and forget the Sun Belt. The battle for the U.S. House, this is the battleground state, unequivocally so. There are at least 5 or 6 very competitive U.S. House races, at least that many in New York. And you'll recall in 2022, Major, several battleground races all went red. And that is why Republicans have the majority, a narrow one in the House now. And if they lose control of those seats this year, that control goes back to the Democrats. Let me run through the 5 that are closest to where I'm standing. Start off on Long Island. New York's 1st district is a first-term Republican named Nick LaLota, running against a Democrat, John Avlon, who's been a cable news fixture through the years. That's a race on Long Island that's drawn a lot of money, drawn a lot of interest. If you go closer to the city, it's New York's 4th district. This one is a whopper. The incumbent, Anthony D'Esposito, up against a formidable challenger in Laura Gillen. It has drawn money. It has drawn a lot of outside interest. And at this point, neither party is expressing ultimate confidence this thing's in the bag. Come up to the Hudson Valley area. The New York 17th was a very Biden district in 2020. But in 2022, the Republicans grabbed it from the then chair of the Democratic Congressional Committee. Michael Lawler's going for a 2nd term, facing former Congressman Mondaire Jones. These are 2 people with institutional knowledge. I am standing in the New York 18th district. Pat Ryan won this thing right after the Dobbs decision in a special election on the issue of women's reproductive rights. He is pushing that issue here again in 2024, trying to fend off a formidable Republican challenger, Allison Esposito, who is a former New York police officer. Then to our north, just a skosh, New York's 19th district, another toss-up race. It's first-term Republican Mark Molinaro, who was the Dutchess County executive, a famous man here before he even got to Congress, running against Josh Riley of Binghamton. Josh Riley has outraised the incumbent, and that's the storyline here, Major. Democrats are so bullish on winning some of these red seats, making them blue again, because they are outraising Republicans, even challengers versus incumbents.
And Scott, how much of the national narrative is influencing these House races?
A lot of talk of border security, perhaps a disproportionate amount here. So many of these congressional districts in New York, outside of New York City, became purple, became competitive because of immigrants from New York City, people who used to live in the city and didn't want to live in the city any longer. They felt there was a migrant crisis in New York that is now coming to their neighborhoods. You're finding Democrats here trying to counterpunch or get ahead of this and running ads on how they're tough on border security. One of them, Laura Gillen, the one running on Long Island, she did a straight-to-camera commercial saying she is the voice of border security on Long Island. That's the dynamic of border security and immigration in these pivotal races.
Ready for his Land's End close-up, Scott MacFarlane from Poughkeepsie, New York. Looking marvelous. We thank you, sir. Next, back to the presidential race and the campaign trail. How celebrities and billionaires are weighing in on the choice between Trump and Harris. More on that. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Trump made it very clear that this is an election about Donald Trump taking full control of the military to use against his political enemies, taking full control of the Department of Justice to prosecute those who disagree with him.
Welcome back to America Decides. While casting his ballot in his home state today, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz argued former President Trump is basically all about retribution if he returns to the White House. With that as one topic of possible many, let's bring in our political panel, Kadia Goba and Sophia Kai. Kadia is a political reporter for Semaphore. Sophia is a national politics reporter at Axios. So I want to play some sound for the two of you from Vice President Harris's interview yesterday with Hallie Jackson. First thing I want to talk to you about and let you listen to is Hallie asked about whether or not, or to what degree, the vice president is emphasizing her gender in this race. Let's listen.
You've been reluctant to lean into, to talk about the historic nature of your candidacy on the campaign trail. Why is that?
Well, I'm clearly a woman. I don't need to point that out to anyone. The point that most people really care about is, can you do the job? And do you have a plan to actually focus on them? They deserve to have a president who's focused on them, as opposed to a Donald Trump who's constantly focused on himself.
Okay, Kadia, we remember 2016. I'm with her. None of that in this campaign.
Yeah, I think this was very obvious during the DNC. And she's right. She is a woman. She's a black woman. We're all aware of that. But I think they're taking notes from the Hillary campaign. That somehow didn't work for Hillary back then in 2016. And I think it's, you know, the campaign understands maybe this is not the best route. She is obviously a woman. She is obviously a black woman. And we see the same thing when it comes to race. We all, people of color, mostly thought that she was not going to run on this issue of race, kind of the same way Obama did.
Sophia, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, look, like I spend a lot of my time out on the campaign trail talking to Trump supporters. And Harris knows, especially to reach those undecideds, the 5% in the middle, she cannot say, vote for me because I'm a woman. Right. She has to show that there's something else for people to vote for. And that is what she's trying to showcase, which is her leadership on the issues, her leadership to be able to lead the most powerful military in the world, right? Like that sort of thing is what she's trying to emphasize.
So for those who are not living in swing states, Washington, D.C., hello, not a swing state, not a jurisdiction that's even swingy at all, you can still see ads about Harris that hit aggressively. These are either Trump supporting or Trump campaign ads on her advocacy in the past for transgender interventions. Hallie Jackson also asked the vice president about this issue in general, And because this is a big part of Trump campaign advertising, let's listen to the answer.
Do you believe that transgender Americans should have access to gender-affirming care in this country?
I believe we should follow the law. I mean, I think you're probably pointing to the fact that Donald Trump's campaign has spent tens of millions of dollars.
They're trying to define you on this.
Yes,
I'm asking you to define yourself, though. Just broadly speaking, what is your value? Do you believe they should have that access?
I believe that people, as the law states, even on this issue about federal law, that is a decision that doctors will make in terms of what is medically necessary. I'm not going to put myself in the position of a doctor.
Sophia, you mentioned being on the campaign trail talking to Trump supporters. This is an issue that resonates.
Yeah, I should say that when Trump is on the stump, when he mentions transgender sports, when he mentions revoking funding for schools or other institutions that are supporting gender-affirming care, he gets the most applause. And it's not necessarily because, you know, there are so many trans people who are voting, but there are some. It's because the Trump campaign is using the trans issue as one to paint Democrats as too liberal, too extreme for the average voter.
As a culture war divider issue. We're on this side. Even one of the ads says, she's for they, them, Trump is for you.
I think this is clearly fodder for the base. I'm not sure it resonates with that demographic both candidates are trying to reach, right in the middle, undecided Republicans who are disaffected with Trump and want to kind of have an excuse to vote for Kamala Harris. This didn't resonate in 2022, so I'm there has to be some internal polling that Republicans are relying on or the campaign is relying on. It's peculiar that you see it on the campaign now because it didn't work in the midterms.
Sophia, we've got billionaires involved, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Cuban, celebrities. Celebrities are always in and out of politics on both sides. Your sense of this collective visibility down the stretch?
First of all, they're billionaires, so their money matters. Right. I think Elon Musk
Their phone calls get answered.
Of course, and Elon Musk, he's counting on his money to buy votes. I mean, he's spending significantly on the ground game. He's spending his own time on the stump with Trump. You know, Bill Gates is doing it in more of a quiet way. I think this is the first time he has gotten into politics. He's made it very clear that this election is different and that, you know, to the extent that he's involved, it's because of Kamala Harris's support of doing something about climate change, childcare. I mean, these are issues that he and his ex-wife, Melinda Gates, have both been very concerned about. And as it comes to celebrities, look, both campaigns have spent resources building up entire teams to court celebrities, to manage celebrity engagement. And that's something that is very new this cycle.
And Kadia, you have written recently about the sense among some who you talked to that Harris needs to do more than she's currently doing in the messaging battle.
Yeah, a lot of people, or some people, and some Democrats felt that she kind of lost that battle. When she came out, she had a lot of momentum, and it wasn't just a honeymoon era. When I look back and think about Donald Trump's shooting, that didn't get as much coverage as it normally did because she was really, really saturating the market. Now you see there was a 2-week lull, and I think she allowed, or people think that she allowed him to gain some traction there, which could have hurt her. Likewise, people questioned why celebrities didn't come out earlier for her. Short time, short campaign. Why not just flood the market and have those celebrities on the stump from the very beginning up until the campaign, end of the campaign?
A significant question. Kadia Goba, Sophia Kai, thanks so very much for your time. Always a pleasure. Throughout the battleground states, gun safety advocates and pro-gun right advocates are both increasing efforts to turn out voters. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand has been speaking to volunteers on both sides, and she joins us now from the White House. Natalie, what did you find?
Hi, Major. Good to be with you. Well, I'm always struck by the passion and the dedication of these volunteers. Some of the gun safety advocates you're about to hear from have been personally impacted by gun violence. They're now out there hitting the doors in support of candidates from the state level to the top of the ticket. Among the throngs of weekend canvassers hitting the doors in the sprint to Election Day,
I'll be there.
Yeah.
are moms on a mission.
We're volunteers with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America.
To get candidates who back stricter gun laws elected.
They will fight for universal background checks. They'll fight for an assault weapons ban.
For volunteer David Manning, it's personal. His father died by suicide.
My father had been on a 72-hour hold after he had a mental breakdown and was still able to purchase a firearm that he should not have had.
Pediatrician Heidi Appel is still haunted by her encounter with a young patient who died in an accidental shooting on Thanksgiving.
There was nothing we could do, and that was the first time I had to tell a mother that her son was dead.
These volunteers are working to turn out the vote for Vice President Kamala Harris, while gun rights groups, including the NRA, are making the case for former President Donald Trump.
We view this as an election of turnout.
Jennifer Bremen says the NRA's push is in battleground states, including Pennsylvania, where gun rights advocates gathered this month in Lehigh County to get out the vote.
What is at stake is our Second Amendment freedoms, that ability for peaceable citizens to defend themselves and their families.
CBS News polling shows 6 in 10 voters consider gun policy a major factor in their choice for president.
Every time I put them on the bus, I just sort of panic every time, like, is this the last time I'm going to see them?
That's why mom Rachel Perrott will be weighing the issue when she votes.
Natalie, the group Everytown for Gun Safety, which of course is backed by former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, says it has stepped up get out the vote operations in some of these most closely contested states. Where are they active?
Yeah, Major, they've opened up field offices in some key cities and key battlegrounds. That includes Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, also Tempe, Arizona. In addition to that, they've hired around 36 organizers nationwide in some additional battlegrounds such as Nevada, Wisconsin, Georgia, and North Carolina. They say this marks the first time that they've had a field operation of this scale before an election cycle. They're also, Major, collaborating with college campuses and talking to young voters and particularly young Democrats. Gun safety, gun control cited as a key issue for them. So they're trying to mobilize their support as well as they continue to try and get out the vote. They feel like they have momentum on their side. But on the other side, the NRA, they're also targeting these key battlegrounds, particularly states where there's not only the presidential race, but key congressional races, Senate races that could determine the balance of power in Congress. That's very important to them. They say they're doing whatever they can to mobilize their NRA members and also gun owners, which they say vote in high numbers. They're sending out millions of postcards. They're trying to communicate with voters via text message, with large ad buys. Both sides, Major, say this will come down to turnout.
At this stage, every voter contact matters. Natalie Brand, thank you so very much. The Atlantic magazine is now reporting that Trump said he wants generals similar to the ones Hitler had. More on that, plus the impact of the former president's rhetoric throughout this campaign. You're streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are. Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go with the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. The Atlantic magazine has new reporting that claims former President Trump praised the control Hitler had over his military. According to the magazine, Trump at one point or another said, and I quote, "I need the kind of generals that Hitler had, people who were totally loyal to him, that follow orders." Opinion columnist for the New York Times, David French, joins us now. David, it's great to have you with us. You wrote today something I want to talk to you about in the context of these most recent reported comments. You said the best way to think about this race between former President Trump and Vice President Harris as a battle between a movement and a coalition, and that MAGA, the movement behind former President Trump, has a high floor and a low ceiling. What did you mean by those characterizations, and how do you think they fit into the way we should evaluate these most recent quotes attributed to Trump?
Yeah, when you're thinking about MAGA, the core Trump supporters, they really believe they're part of almost like a revolutionary movement. They believe that the world is against them. They're full of purpose and mission in supporting Donald Trump. And they're really in this place that is something that we've really not seen in modern American politics, and that they're in a place of near total devotion or total devotion. And so Trump, in that way, has pocketed just tens of millions of voters who he can count on absolutely no matter what. But the problem for him is that an enormous number of Americans look at that movement and are appalled by it. You know, they see comments like those that were reported in The Atlantic, where he talks about the loyalty that he demands of generals and wanting the loyalty that you saw from generals towards, or some of the generals towards Hitler. And they look at that and they're repulsed by it, utterly repulsed, whereas members of his movement either just don't believe he said it at all or don't care, because that's nothing compared to the larger goal. And so he's got tens of millions of people who are going to support him no matter what. And Kamala Harris doesn't have the same kind of cultish movement behind her. So she has to assemble, like a jigsaw puzzle, people from a bunch of different walks of American life, from the left to the right, to try to defeat this movement. So she's got higher potential support because there's more people who oppose Trump than support Trump in America. But at the same time, she doesn't have that devoted base, and that's what makes her vulnerable.
David, do you have any sense that this movement behind Trump sometimes beguiles even Trump, meaning he leans into it even more than he otherwise would if he was looking at this election more strategically?
Absolutely, it beguiles Trump. He loves the roar of the crowd. He uses his crowds as sort of a kind of focus group to know what to focus on, to what to talk about more and in the public square. So there is absolutely no question that this beguiles him, and it also beguiles his movement. They have this symbiotic relationship where they reinforce each other. But at the same time, as they're doing it, as they're reinforcing each other, and as they're radicalizing, they're repelling and repulsing millions more Americans. And so that's why throughout the Trump era, the Trump movement has always been smaller. Remember, it's never won a popular vote. It's always been smaller than the Democratic coalition. But because of the Electoral College, because of the precise nature of the Trump movement, it has some advantages on election day. And that's why it's constantly a threat to win.
And in that regard, David, when you talk to Trump Inner Circle members, they say he's never been better positioned. All the things that you just talked about, David, may be true, but Trump's never been better positioned, meaning there is a resilience to this movement that even now, the third time around, pollsters are still missing. How do you assess that?
Well, there's no question he's well positioned to win. I mean, I think anyone who's looking at this would say this race is a toss-up. So he's well positioned to win. But he's been well positioned to win every time he's run because of the same reason. And that reason, he has this huge, rock-solid base of support. So in any given election, he just has to add a few more additional voters to put himself right in contention, right into the thick of everything. So yeah, they're right. He is well positioned to win because he has this giant, giant base. And also he's well positioned because he's a challenger, and some Americans are not happy with the direction of the country. So even if they don't particularly love Trump, they'll view him as their only option for voting for change. And so, yeah, he is well positioned. However, at the same time, if you had a different Republican running, one who had a capacity to reach out beyond the base, I think they'd be running away with this election now. They wouldn't just be well positioned to win. They would be possessing a commanding lead and highly likely to win. So Trump's base is both a strong component of his support, but the relationship he has with this base and the nature of MAGA also limits his appeal.
David French, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Fake social media accounts linked to China are spreading across multiple platforms in an effort to interfere with this election. Next, how these accounts have shifted their strategy as we get closer to November 5th. That's next. You're streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good? Mm-hmm. Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party? Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
About the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now.
That are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
On Face the Nation, the way to learn is to listen.
We may have a recession.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
Welcome back to America Decides. As Election Day inches closer, organizations are monitoring efforts by foreign governments to interfere. A recent report by Graphica, a company that tracks and studies online communities, uncovered what it says are more than a dozen accounts across more than 40 platforms carrying key markers of a China-linked spamouflage campaign. Spamouflage. CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio, who's worked in China for many years, has more.
At first glance, this online profile might look like an American ranting about hot-button issues. But these signs are a tip-off, it's a deception. Bad English grammar, Chinese characters, and the sheer number of similar posts are clues it may be part of a massive Beijing-linked misinformation campaign known as spamouflage.
It's the largest known covert influence operation online.
Kenton Thibault is a resident China fellow at the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab.
Spamouflage refers to this large, sprawling network of inauthentic accounts run by Chinese state-linked assets that posted in the beginning primarily pro-China messages. So very spammy, very propagandistic kind of messaging that would then be retweeted by other accounts in the network.
Experts at the DFR lab in Washington, New York-based Graphica, and London-based Institute for Strategic Dialogue have been tracking this Chinese network as far back as 2017.
They largely didn't get any really authentic reach.
But with the U.S. midterm elections in 2022, spamouflage started to sharpen its strategy.
From focusing on just kind of banal, propagandistic, clunky pro-China messages to really focusing on trying to influence domestic conversation.
Attempting to make Americans hate and fight more over gun violence and control, police brutality and Black Lives Matter, abortion after the end of Roe v. Wade, and most recently, the Israel-Hamas war. Originally, the network attacked American politics, regardless of party. But since 2023, a segment of spamouflage has morphed into what the ISD is calling magaflage, accounts posing as right-wing Americans, targeting populations like Donald Trump's most die-hard supporters. One of the network's biggest wins was thanks to conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, says ISD. They identified this magaflage accounts he reposted. It was seen hundreds of thousands of times. ISD called it phenomenal, saying magaflage has been more effective than spamouflage because these accounts behave much more like real people. The goal of magaflage ultimately is to support the interests of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, something other agencies agree on.
With January 6th, what the CCP learned is that this is a potentially ripe community for mobilizing offline and causing disruption.
Regardless of political party, Republicans and Democrats are being targeted through better digital disguises.
What would you say to people watching this so that they can understand how best to prepare themselves, how best to be aware?
One kind of good gut check question to ask is this causing me some sort of hyped emotion?
But like most disinformation, it only works if we spread it. Ramy Inocencio, CBS News, London.
South Carolina is set to build its first monument to a black leader and place it somewhere on the state capitol grounds. It will honor Robert Smalls, a former slave who dressed up as a slave owner as part of a daring escape to free his family and a dozen other enslaved people. After the Civil War, Smalls took up a career in politics. He helped rewrite the state's constitution to give black men equal rights. Smalls also represented South Carolina at both the state and federal level for nearly 20 years. His political career coincided with Reconstruction. It ended abruptly when Reconstruction ended and was replaced by Jim Crow laws. We do not know yet what this statue will look like. A special committee has until early next year to come up with a design. That does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report, well, that starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report on October 23rd, 2024. I'm Lindsay Reiser. As Vice President Harris participates in a town